Mr. Scary Studios.
As part of my degree, I was doing a placement year in another city a little over a year ago. This was a city where I didn't know anyone, and so I moved into a private student halls. The halls were arranged into flats of five. So there were five in suite bedrooms and then a shared kitchen. The keys were electronic, so your key would open the door to the building, the door to your flat, and the door to your bedroom. Three of four of my flatmates were international students, two girls and a guy, none of which spoke particularly good English, and they all kept to themselves a lot. They were perfectly friendly whenever I ran into them, but it was rare that I saw them, and we didn't chat much beyond the generic small talk. The fourth flatmate was a really outgoing guy. I saw him a bit more often and he was chattier, but given that none of the others really socialized, he made friends with people from other flats, and so he wasn't about much either. So this meant I was living in a flat with four strangers, and because they were all students and I was working an 8 to 6 job, we didn't see much of each other, and we never really talked. It wasn't an ideal arrangement, but it worked fine. I had friends at work I sometimes went out with. Some good, tender fortune meant I had a boyfriend that would come over pretty often. So I was pretty settled. I pretty quickly got into a nice routine in days where I had no evening plans. Come home, shower, make food in the kitchen, and then retire to my bedroom for the evening. You always hear stories of dodgy flatmates that steal and or mess with people's rooms when they're out, and so I'd always lock my bedroom door whenever I went out. But I always figured that there was no point in locking my room if I was in there. But one night, I'd gone through my usual routine and then had gone to bed reasonably early. At around 5 a.m., I woken up to the sound of my bedroom door opening. It takes me a second to wake up and realize what's happening, and then I sit bolt upright. Now, this is 5 a.m. in winter, and so my room is pitch black, but the corridor light is on, so all I can see is the silhouette of a man standing halfway between the door and my bed. With hindsight screaming, you should probably be the automatic reaction here. But I was so in shock that all I could do was repeat the questions, "Who are you? Why are you here?" over and over. This probably only lasted about 30 seconds. But when you're frozen with fear in the middle of the night, 30 seconds becomes so much longer. The guy didn't move or say anything. He just stood there looking at me before finally turning and calmly walking back out of my room. When I was finally able to move, I turned all the lights on, locked the doors, and called security. To this day, I have no idea who the man was or why he was even there. It was one of my flatmates. It could have only been the outgoing guy because he was the only one tall enough to be the man in my room. The thing that still really spooks me is that it was a simple mistake and someone got in the wrong room, maybe? Then surely he'd just apologize and leave as soon as they opened the door. And he'd been there to rob me then again. Surely he'd have panicked and disturbed and ran, but the fact that he just stood there and looked at me still sends chills down my spine. Years ago, I'd say over half a decade, I got on the subway at rush hour to head home after a long day of classes. I was exhausted too. There are periods in my life where I can't sleep. No matter how tired I am, it takes me hours and hours to fall asleep, and no matter how late I fall asleep, I wake up well before sunrise. Repeat. So there I was, crushed tight in this train, everyone rubbing against each other side by side. So we all fit in naturally. Like a polite person, I'd taken off my bag and held it with a hand between my legs to ensure I wasn't taking up too much space. I'm spacing out on top of lack of sleep. I was one of those idiots who had the great idea to have a 4-day weekend and scheduled all my classes on 2 days, meaning I'd had 9 hours straight of dull lectures. But I noticed out of the corner of my eye the guy standing to my right keeps glancing at me. I don't think much of it, but he keeps doing it throughout the 10 minutes I'm riding the train. We get to my stop and the guy next to me stopped too. I feel a pull on my bag and quickly glance over, thinking he's not actually trying to steal my bag, is he? Nope, turns out I haven't been holding my bag at all, but I've been holding a bit of his coat sleeve this entire time. Like I'm a little kid and he's my mom. By the time I realized he was speeding out the door and I couldn't even apologize. I still blush and get embarrassed every time I think about this to this day. I feel so sorry for this poor guy. About a week ago I was home alone throughout the night. My boyfriend went to work and I just could not sleep. I was up until about 3 a.m., which isn't usual for me. I was sitting in my bedroom, my dog downstairs in her crate to stop her from terrorizing my cat who was asleep in the spare bedroom. Anyways, I was sitting there watching YouTube and TV and writing on a novel and kept hearing things go bump in the night. A chain rattle, which I thought was weird, but I figured it was my neighbor's fence. Things moving in the backyard. Anyways, despite me explaining things away in my head, I still got up with my pistol on my hip and looked all out my windows and didn't see anything of concern. I had just went through the house and checked all the angles again and sat back down, trying to calm my nerves. Then my not normally vocal dog barked quickly and growled. That's when I started thinking that there was really someone in my yard. See, the thing is, her pen is facing a bay window that leads into the backyard. They would have thought standing on something for them to see her or her to see them. Someone had to have been peeking in my window. I was shaking tired and absolutely terrified, but I went downstairs to let my 95-pound pup into the yard, me in tow with my pistol on my hip. I still was thinking there was no way someone was in my yard, so was kind of thinking I was overreacting. I let my pup out the door, and she instantly was crouching. Hair on the back of her neck was standing straight up, and a low growl as she crept around the side of the house towards that damned window. I have never seen her like this and told her to go pee and immediately called her into the house. When she was finished the next morning, I wake up. My boyfriend's home and I start babbling about how I thought someone was in the yard last night. Just talking about it was making me anxious. And he thought I was overreacting, as I'm scared of the dark anyways. He basically dismissed it as a possum or raccoon. I was starting to think I was going crazy, or had just sleep-deprived myself into imagining things. We took our pup into the yard to play like usual. We're running around the yard and goofing off. My boyfriend is standing near the house smoking a cigarette and pacing around and goes over to the window. I'm kind of watching him now, and he tells me to come over to where he is. My heart sank as he says, "Yeah, I believe you." He points to the window, and right on the window sill on the outside there's a distinct grip swipe marks where someone balanced themselves to look through a rip in the curtain into our living room. I still want to vomit thinking about someone looking into my house, especially as there have been probably 16 break-ins in our neighborhood alone in a couple months or less. Window creeper, that surely would have been 8 by my abnormally large pup. Please don't come back. I really don't want to meet you.